So I'm back here in the United States. Specifically, this time I'm back home in Orlando, Florida. And of course I'm driving around right now because here in Florida and much of the United States, you have to drive pretty much everywhere. And coming back here and doing a lot more driving and seeing different things from, when I used to live here and seeing different things compared to what I'm used to now living in the Netherlands. Every time I come back, there's always something that catches my eye. And so today's video, I wanted to kind of capture and talk about some of those differences I noticed now coming back to the United States, driving around the United States after living in the Netherlands and driving in many different countries in Europe. So let's jump into it. So I'm here waiting at a traffic light, and this is one of the things that coming back to the United States and doing a lot of driving, you have these massive intersections and you spend a lot of time waiting at red lights. And before the advent of the smartphone, people would just sit here and kind of do nothing. Of course, nowadays everybody's on their phones at these traffic light intersections because that's not illegal. Here in Florida, you're allowed to use your phone when stationary. Of course, you can't use your phone while driving. But coming back to the United States and driving around Florida, I spent a lot of time waiting at intersections, and I don't miss that. Usually in the Netherlands, the traffic signals are much more coordinated with the traffic. Traffic lights here generally during the daytime are based on timers that are coordinated for the traffic flows for that time period of the day, but still, it's very much a lot of time spent waiting at red lights. So a lot of time is spent waiting at traffic lights, but that's something that you just kind of have to get back used to when you're driving here in the United States. The next thing that I want to touch on is it's very much still a driving culture. I'm coming to an area here called Oviedo on the Park, and what I'm showing here is mixed-use town centers, as they're called, are becoming more common, not just in Florida, but around the United States. And this is kind of a concept that's, normal for, I would say, Europeans, where you have businesses on the bottom ground and apartments on the top, and it's kind of this walkable, pedestrian-friendly area. The thing is, while these are becoming more common, these are still very much an area that is oriented towards cars, and it's still something that people have to drive to. So while it's nice once you get here and you park and you walk around, these town centers, as they're called, are still very much car oriented and destinations that you need to have a car, because outside of these town centers there's not much public transportation or accessibility. So Florida is still very much a driving culture, driving oriented place, and that's not going to change, even with the pop-up of these town centers that I've seen here in Orlando, also in South Florida. I like the idea. I like that there's more of these mixed-use facilities where we're combining retail and living spaces. I've watched a lot of urban planning channels, and while I don't fully agree on, let's say, the war on cars, it is nice to have other options than just suburban town homes and suburban homes and neighborhoods and shopping centers. It's nice to combine the two. That being said, especially here in Florida, it's huge, right? The state is huge, the cities are huge. You need cars to get around. Public transportation isn't prevalent, and these, mixed-use facilities are still far apart. So even though there's more of these and it's nice places for people to live and work and shop, it's still going to be very much somewhere that you have to drive to or have a car to get out of that area. But it's nice to see more of these popping up, and giving people an alternative lifestyle and life choice when it comes to housing. On this trip, I'm actually also going to be spending some time in Las Vegas, Nevada. So either part of this video or a separate video, I'm going to show a little bit of driving around there and seeing how Nevada compares to Florida and what's really similar in terms of driving in the United States when you go from one side of the United States to the other. And as you've seen just past me here is a giant F-250 that somebody is just driving around normally here in Florida. This is completely normal to see a big giant pickup truck like this. The roads are huge, people don't care, and they want to drive these big trucks, and they can. And even if you don't use it as a truck, people drive these trucks. And that's the other thing that I want to cover that is a big difference that I notice every time I come back to the United States, and especially Florida: more trucks and SUVs on the road. Every time I come back, I'm always surprised. And yes, I'm driving in one right now. This is my mom's. She's always liked to drive and sit a little bit taller on the road. But now and more commonly today, everybody wants to drive an SUV. So you start to see less cars on the road. And this has been a common trend over the past few years, and it's getting exponential. You see even police cars are SUVs. SUVs are everything here in the United States. And if you follow the car market, Ford stopped selling cars here in the United States. And a lot of auto manufacturers are following suit because there's just not demand for cars anymore. Everybody wants a small SUV, medium-sized SUV, big SUV, every flavor of SUV. And I get it now, because when you're driving around here, with everybody surrounding you having bigger and bigger vehicles, it's kind of this vicious cycle. You don't want to be the smallest car on the road. If there's an accident, which happens often because you're driving a lot, you don't want to be crushed. You don't want to feel unsafe in a smaller vehicle. So when people go to upgrade, they tend to go for an SUV now. And you still see cars on the road, and these are probably people who've been keeping cars, or the fewer people who really enjoy driving a car. But more and more, every time I come back here, more and more SUVs on the road. Personally, as a car enthusiast who prefers driving cars, this isn't really a trend I like to see. I'm still sitting higher. I personally don't like that, but when I'm driving here and surrounded by big vehicles, I get the benefit, honestly. It's something that'll be interesting to see how this plays out over the next few years here in the United States, because we're seeing a lot of car manufacturers stop selling cars here because the market just doesn't have the demand for it. The cars aren't selling. And so what's that going to mean? I mean, we see a similar trend in Europe with more and more SUV options, but they're still selling small cars. There's still a market for that. Will that start to change as well? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm really kind of frustrated with the SUV scene here in the United States and Canada, and now seeing that kind of spread to Europe, I'm a little bit sad to see that. So let me know in the comments below how you feel about SUVs versus cars on the roads here. It's big, small SUVs as well. But every time I'm back here in Florida, it seems like there's more trucks and SUVs. And personally, from people I know that I talk to when I come back here, everybody wants to drive an SUV now. So one of the common drives I do while I'm here in Orlando is from Orlando to the East Coast of Florida to see family. And so I'm doing that now, and one of the things you'll see in this video is right now I'm driving through backcountry roads, and this isn't very far from the developed area that I just showed. And this is one of the things I think channels don't realize when they talk about urban planning in the United States. They don't realize how big the United States is sometimes. And when you get out, a couple miles, it's very sparsely populated in a lot of places, and the urban planning concepts don't apply to backcountry roads out here. And you have to have a car out here. In a lot of cases, you have to have a truck because you're driving on dirt roads in some cases. Now, this is a very Florida-specific example, but this happens and exists all over the United States. And the urban planning concepts of mixed use and public transportation, bus, rapid transit, metro lines, it's great for cities, great for urban areas, and it's great to have those options. But once you get outside of those options, you need a car. You need a car in the United States. That's not going to change anytime soon, even with more urban planning concepts coming, because you have so many places like this in the United States that are just rural, country land, country roads, big houses with a lot of land. And if you have friends and family that live out there, you're going to need a way to get there. Buses aren't going to help you. Trains, trams, public transportation, they're not going to help. And this is where, cars really are a staple and a necessity in the United States. And I think, every time I come back to the United States, it's a bit, annoying how much I have to drive, but I like driving. And it's unfortunate there's a lot of people on the roads who don't want to drive, but have to drive. So, I am all for having additional options for people where that makes sense. But the reality is, for a lot of the United States, I mean, this represents the majority of the United States, except for densely populated urban areas scattered around the country. You need to have a car. People need to drive. What we could do, and what's a happy medium to me, is to, one, have better driver education, to have better drivers and safer roads, and have better road design where we can, incorporate some of the concepts of where, we don't have such wide roads. We have much more, curves and chicanes and, speed humps to regulate traffic and to slow traffic down, pedestrian crossings, bicycle lanes. I'm all for all of those options and incorporating that even into rural design roads here. But the reality is, we're going to need cars. Cars are going to be around forever, especially in the United States. And it's because of parts of the country like this that, exist for the car and have been able to thrive and exist because of the car and truck. And that's just the reality of the United States. The reality is, here in the United States, cars aren't going anywhere. And yes, we're going to have these vast parking lots that maybe are a waste of land use. And we maybe need to rethink how we use those vast parking lots and vast spaces that are designed for cars. I'm all for finding a better middle ground. So one of the things I've been thinking about, and we're seeing this starting to happen, is we have these massive parking lots, right? We need them for the cars. That's fine. But let's think about how we can make those more sustainable. How about putting solar panels overhead of those parking lots. We have these massive parking lots. Here's some examples here in Florida. Let's put some solar panels. Now that will reduce, the clearance height, but that's something that we can work with, or maybe we can cover parts of parking lots and leave other parts open for bigger vehicles and higher, trucks and these types of things. But we can have, lower height clearance parking areas that, we can start putting solar panels, start putting EV charging points. We see this in the Netherlands here, and I'm gonna do a whole video on that. And I've just seen that France is starting to push for this as well, to have solar panels in parking lots. It makes total sense. Let's rethink how we can use parking lots and still, accommodate the car and still make parking lots a little bit more sustainable. So I'd really like to see a push for that. Now, of course, it's expensive, and anything that's expensive is unfavorable. But if we want to start balancing the way we use cars and the way we design land for our cars, let's make it a bit more dual purpose and a bit more sustainable in that sense. And I think that's a compromise I can get on board with. So that's mainly what I wanted to cover in this part of the video here in Florida. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to do a separate video in Nevada, in Las Vegas, and we'll touch on differences there. That's a whole different world, really, when you think about it. But there's a lot of similarities when it comes to driving and the way people drive in the United States. So I think that's where we'll leave it here in Florida. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next one. Here, during the day, it's usually based on timers, and of course, people aren't paying attention. So sometimes you have to, wake them up and let them know the light's green.